So I hear there's things that people are not paying attention to that they should be paying attention to. What did they miss today?
And
What?
a lot of what people are missing nowadays tends to happen online, out of sight, out of mind. So you have cyber attacks, and a lot of cyber attacks are, I mean, it's a lot of people's data. They're infrastructure attacks, specifically on the US, but elsewhere as well, not just the US. Um, but this tends to be an area where people aren't paying attention. The news rarely reports about it. It's very quick in and out, and most people tend to disassociate themselves with any information leaks because everybody thinks that they are on top of their stuff. But
And it's
this,
bad for business if it comes out that they're not.
yes, and it can happen to anyone and everyone, especially considering all of the new technology that's out there right now. I mean, your phones are probably the easiest way to gather information and intel and data. The people use the same passwords over and over, so when one password somewhere gets you know
Yeah.
gets hacked, and they use that, implement that somewhere else. So
So,
the
so hacking
password
is
vault, and go ahead.
so hacking is a couple of different things. Hacking is a bunch of pirates sitting somewhere in, oddly enough, Africa, who just hacks into your phone or your computer and tries to extort money from you by locking up your computer, holding it for ransom, or businesses holding them for ransom by stealing them from their stuff. Then you have those who hack in to leak the information of the organization they're leaking into, and then you sometimes have hackers being used as an excuse when government entities wish to leak some things that they really shouldn't. There's a lot of different kinds of hacking. What's been going on lately?
So what you see a lot, and what you hit on in the first portion there, it's referred to as a ransomware attack. So someone gains control of your device or your server or something that you have access to, and they encrypt it, and then they hit you up with the nice little message saying, hey, pay us X amount of money, or we will delete all your information. Same thing kind of goes with when they exfiltrate. They basically go into somebody's server, and this has happened with a few different companies that have video games coming out or something. People will hack their servers and extract new games coming out and say, hey, if you don't pay us X amount, then we'll just release all this stuff. And so it tends to be it's information tied, but what you tend to see also is that people will just sneak into your system, take this information, and sell it to vendors online or sell it to people directly online, and that's through use of through crypto and other means of payment on the dark web, or what people refer to as the dark web, which is just technically the deep web.
And this for people, this happens as easily as opening the wrong email, clicking the wrong attachment, or sometimes even without them knowing entirely.
Oh yeah, the phishing attacks is what you're referring to, and
Yeah.
it's phishing spelled with a PH, not an F. Um, those are some of the most common. A lot of the attacks that you see, the SMB attacks, they go through uh, email servers because it's one of the most exploitable types that you can use against someone. There are a lot of others. It just depends on who their target is and how they can weasel their way into the system. But yes, you tend to see a lot of phishing attacks. They dig for information. People will just blindly respond to it, thinking that, hey, their bank just sent me an email saying, hey, I need to log in and verify the last three charges. If you get something like that on your email and you have the app on your phone and you haven't gotten a notification, you probably should just delete it. Your
Yeah.
bank will hit you up directly and let you know. And then, even then, you don't give them information; they give you information for you to verify they are the bank. So
But that's the boring stuff. That's Mr. and Mrs. Jones having their computers hacked for all their home porn, and that's not really going to affect the rest of the world. There's been some big hacks with some very sensitive information that's been coming out again and again. And just today, I believe it was, the White House was defending themselves that obviously they have been hacked because the Israeli attack plans against Iraq have just magically been leaked. Hacked. And
Yes.
funny because when I heard them say that they must have been hacked, they don't know how that happened. I think I became psychic for a second because I will swear that my third eye said that they've been leaked. Sometimes hacking is used as an excuse for things entities wanting to leak, and I don't know why. I that's kind of how what I heard. What I heard. Could this be entirely mistaken here on my part?
No, you'd be on point. It's also another way of information dissemination. So this is basically, it's almost like we're seeing covert ops attacks, but what they do is provide us with information and intel. Maybe something that the news isn't hitting on, but you see stuff like that. And it goes both ways, whether they're trying to obfuscate information or they're trying to give you information. And in this case, the whole Israel classified document release and whatnot. That's an interesting one that ties to.
It is a little bit because it's not like this particular administration, although publicly they will state that they're allied to Israel and very friendly to Israel, but in reality, they're really not that happy about Israel. Obama's tried for 8 years to get Netanyahu kicked out of office, campaigned against him, and there's been a fairly obvious attack from this administration against an Israeli nationalist. So that's why I thought, well, and it's not like allies don't spy on each other as well, and when they want something out, we can always blame a hacker. Well, the Russians did it.
Yeah, no, it's always, the interesting thing about a lot of these cyber attacks that people don't really think about is uh, if you do hear about it on the news, they're usually blaming some random obscure hacker group. Oh, so and so, just random group, whatever, decided to do this for their own little reasons. What people don't realize is a lot of these groups are co-opted, and they're co-opted by governments. So they're working as like covert operatives with an agenda, a larger agenda than they actually put out. So we saw that with, I think the last thing we spoke about was the Internet Archives.
Yes.
So there was the Internet Archives. Not too long ago, there was an AT&T Verizon data breach, or not data breach, but it was basically a breach in their systems for services that they provide to the U.S. that allow FBI to surveil individuals based off of it's basically their surveillance tool with those companies that was breached and exploited or taken over by a group called Salt Typhoon out of supposedly China. So, and they're allegedly associated with the government over there.
I mean, every company in China is associated with the government in China, in one way or another. I believe that was actually the charter all companies had to sign in China, that they had to respond to the governments in case there. I can't remember what the exact wording of that was. But so do we really think that the Chinese did it? Because I seem to remember since the Patriot Act, our own government can spy on us at will any which way they want. Or did they need an excuse to get through a back door?
I would almost guess an excuse, because this gives them access to the wiretapping systems that the FBI gets to use. So this is generally, FBI has to go to the courts and they have to get basically permission to wiretap or surveil somebody. That's either through FISA or just through a warrant. And then they're allowed to use this for whoever their target is. Now you have a hacking group in another country that has access to this, and they can do whatever they want with it. So think of the possibilities with that if you're an AT&T or Verizon user.
And now you no longer have to officially ask for permission. That's what they did. So does that give them access to everybody's information, or just certain individuals who are looking? Do we know how deep this hack was? Was that pretty much they could go in and now look at you and I communication? Or?
So, and I'm pretty sure they don't even, they probably know how massive it is. They put out initially, I believe, millions of users were affected, but who knows how many people. They're not going to say all of their users are affected. I mean, technically, it would be all of their users, you know?
Yeah.
But it's dependent on who's being targeted. So, you know, they'll put out some menial number and kind of downplay it. But this one wasn't reported largely. And even when you try to look for it, it won't pop up as easily. So, and that involved AT&T and Verizon, which basically, if you live in the US, everybody has AT&T or Verizon. It's rare that you don't. And even then, if you have access to their systems, I mean, any of the smaller companies, you know, T-Mobile, all the other ones, yeah, they basically piggyback off of the larger systems to use their you know, their radio towers.
Yeah, because a lot of the smaller carriers. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that would give them access to everything. So it doesn't even matter who was targeted. It was probably everybody. But are you or me or Joe Blow really that important? I mean, they have their specific targets. It's just, you know, who and why. So
that's one of the things we talked about a lot of times where there has been a power outage in select areas. You were telling me about that some months ago. There were select power outages in select areas specifically so somebody could go and retrieve information from similar type companies.
So a lot of times what you'll see is when they need to extract information from certain databases tied to a service, they'll bring down the service for a short period of time and they'll extract whatever information is needed, and then they will put it back up. Now for us, that may show up, you know, as you'll get a little notice saying, oh yeah, there's going to be a data outage or a power outage or this or that or the other for a short period of time, and then it comes back up. But you've seen that historically with, and I think one of the ones that was most interesting was Xbox, where they shut down Xbox services to exfiltrate data that was needed for other investigations. So you tend to see that happen.
What was for people who don't know why was that important? Because people think that a bunch of stone gamers are sitting around. Who cares what they're chatting about? But it's not that black and white.
Well, let's just say if you wanted to communicate secretly with other entities, and it doesn't matter who you are. You can get creative and think in your own head. You know, important people. Let's just say they wanted to chat. It was found that some of them were using game services through Xbox. So they would join a game, whether it was a mobile game or, you know, a PC game, and they would chat inside the chat that the game provides, lock the chat, and they were specifically talking about very interesting stuff on those chats. So what you ended up seeing, I believe, circa 2019, I think it's 2018, 2019, you saw Xbox go down a few times, and that's basically what they took it down for. And when they report on it, you know, they'll report anything from, oh, it was a DDoS to, oh, it's just a random outage. I mean, we don't need to know. But obviously other things are happening behind the scenes.
And that's not the only thing that happened in the gaming world, because now I can't for the life of me right now remember what there's a corporal in the National Guard that had gotten his hands on some really sensitive information. I can't remember what it was, and he leaked them on a gaming chat, didn't he? Remember that was a couple of years ago?
You know what? I remember hearing this specifically. You know what? I'd have to pull it up.
I can't for the
But
life of me remember what it was he got his hands on. Some
it's
plans of something important.
you know
I think
it's almost like hidden in plain sight. You would never think to maybe go into a chat room like that and and use it for nefarious purposes, especially when you portray the gaming scene as a bunch of stoners or neckbeards in their basement. I think South Park does a really good job with the portrayal.
they really
I,
do. But it's perfect. The same thing with people, they say that in public spheres like Twitter and so on. Well, they're communicating and hiding communication. They're not. We're not talking about the tweets they post. We're talking about the kind of conversations they're having behind the scenes that might be important. And gaming spheres are the same.
yeah.
So now for
Well,
all of this, go on.
it's like you had pointed out Discord started for gamers to organize and play games together, chat, and you had pointed out that different military entities use Discord.
Yeah, they're using Discord to
It's
call in strikes now. So that's a bit of a departure from World of Warcraft into actual battlefield craft.
oh yeah, I mean, and it's used in schools now. It's used everywhere, so
Yeah,
it's not just that, but um, everything's kind of, it seems like it's just hidden in plain sight. People don't hear about it, see about it. If you don't see it and it's not in front of you, you tend to not really think about it. The whole out of sight, out of mind thing, and the stuff that happens online tends to be out of sight for most people, unless it's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or wherever else you wander, Reddit, you know.
then we'll be here today and forgotten tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it seems to me if we take the criminal hacking and the ransomware hacking, which is something you all should be very much aware of and guard yourself against as much as you can, it seems to me that there are specific hacks that are being done by specific entities and proxies to gain information or gain the upper hand. It almost looks to me like there's a war going on underneath the surface between several entities. Both of them may be domestic, maybe foreign and domestic. There seems to be an actual intelligence war going on under the surface here.
Oh yeah. No, 100%. I mean, you look at some of the cyber attacks that have just happened this past month. I mean, one of the other ones outside of the AT&T and the Internet Archive was the Iran nuclear infrastructure cyber attack, which is
Yes.
huge. I mean, that's not just Ticketmaster and their list of clients. That's even larger because that has to do with their nuclear and communications networks. As
Yeah.
far as, so that's a whole lot. That's huge. I mean, that's like a lot of the hacks that had been happening with our power infrastructure and whatnot. We had a few of those, I believe, earlier this year and last year, and they keep happening. And they're tying a lot of this. What's interesting is where a lot of these attacks originate from. And there's a bunch that come from North Korea. And you would never think North Korea would be the technologically advanced types to just be hacking the world, which is
I mean, they
kind of
don't even
crazy
have
to think
color.
about. What's that?
They don't even have color.
I know, right?
They're
It's
black
funny.
and white.
It's funny because they release their own version of Windows, and I think it's like a Windows 8. It's like Windows XP still, but it's
So you need
loaded with. Yeah, it runs. That's probably not supported by Microsoft anymore, obviously, but it's just loaded with all of their propaganda. It's got their little flag as the main icon, and it's kind of interesting. But you could, if you're interested, you could always download the ISO, the image file for it, and just throw it into a virtual machine and fire it up and have fun with North Korea's Windows Premiere.
I mean, it seems only fair that they have propaganda on the internet because we have it every time we turn the TV on. So,
Although it calls back to their government, I believe, so you probably wouldn't want to mess with it too much unless you know what you're doing. But
Well, I
Gotta love
mean,
it.
just that sort of reminds me of just as Zuckerberg, he's sitting right now, twisting himself into a pretzel, apologizing for having been given into government pressure of censorship during the election campaign and COVID. He's doing the very same thing in subverting and giving into government pressure in Brazil by censoring information from the political opponents of the party currently in power. So nothing really changes.
Yeah.
Um,
You know what's interesting too is that earlier this month, it is probably like the third or fourth of this month, you had that Cambodian journalist that was arrested. Basically, they were covering cyber crimes and like human trafficking within the country, and it's almost as if they didn't like that. You know,
in
all at
Cambodia or
least
in America?
all the stuff within Southeast Asia.
Ah,
So they were covering a lot of that in their reporting, and they got arrested basically for that.
really?
But let's see if I could pull up the name. It was a
Just,
Cambodian journalist, Mech Dara. So Mechdara. So that was kind of an interesting one, but that's another. I mean, stuff like that is just interesting that you never hear about, even when it happens here. I mean, everyone knows who Julian Assange is and what he's famous for, whether
yeah.
they agree with it or not. Um, I mean, it's all, and then it makes you wonder, like, are these guys operatives of, and if they are, of what country and for who? So,
So can we even extrapolate like we can like every time there's an event or supposed event or something goes bump in the media, I always ask myself if I see a story, and this ties into propaganda, but if I see a story that's negative for somebody, I will then start asking myself who stands to benefit in the end from this event or this thing happening, because sometimes it's not just it's you need to go 7, 8, 9 steps further to see eventually there's a I can give you an example. Somebody attacks somebody, a bus blows up somewhere, troops are sent in, something down the line, somebody gets a defense contract. Who in the end who benefited from this bus blowing up? 7 steps later, somebody on a defense contract. Just to
yeah.
use a random example, can you do the same thing with these hacks, saying that this is being leaked or this information? Of course, the stuff that's being stolen, we don't know. But can we say that there's someone benefiting from this, or so some of these, or could be benefiting?
You can. But once again, kind of like all the other stories you were just pointing out, is they look for that emotional response. And they tell you information was, taken from X, Y, or Z. People generally, the emotional response is, well, was my information taken? So people are more concerned about themselves first.
Yeah,
And then once they clear themselves of being okay and or they handled it, they tend to just not care anymore
yeah,
because everyone's bubble is more important than the totality of what's going on, and most people don't care to jump outside that bubble and actually look. So that's when you start to see the bigger picture, is when you remove yourself from your bubble. So then you see, where's the information going? Was it actually a legitimate, you know cyber attack? Because sometimes these cyber attacks are reported and then the news tells everybody that it happened, and then sometimes they find out afterwards that they weren't as bad as they were, or it didn't happen. You know, so I forgot which recent one. There was a report about it. Um, if it comes to mind, I'll bring it back up. But there was one where they couldn't verify whether the information was actually from a cyber attack or not.
I mean,
And
is it even possible to see who that there was somebody in? If somebody just hacks into your server and specifically copies files, information, and then leaves again, is that even always detected?
Well, it just depends on the company. A lot of the times they know if somebody is accessing their servers, their networks from outside. And it's
Yeah.
whether or not they want to report on it. Some of these companies don't report on it for like a month or two or three, or until they absolutely have to. maybe they'll figure out, okay, somebody accessed it, but we don't know what they took. They can't really report anything. They'd just be creating, fear for no reason. But when they generally know what happens and all their techs have gone through the data, it takes a while. It's not easy, which is why it's just getting crazier and crazier, because the attacks that a lot of these hackers or groups or government entities they're deploying they're getting a lot more savvy. So it's harder to detect who, what, where, with the use of proxies and VPNs and all that. So it's really interesting. I mean, you just look at a lot of the infrastructure attacks. A lot of them are infrastructure attacks. The Port of Seattle, this was last month, was hit by a ransomware group. And they disrupted a bunch of their services.
Yeah.
Baggage handling, the ticketing. You saw that, I think, recently with airlines, where apps were down for numerous airlines. They had to cancel thousands of flights. Stillwater Mining Company was hit with an attack. This was middle of September, another ransomware attack. And that was the US's only platinum mining company. So kind of interesting.
It's interesting that because now that you've got me, well, I don't know, you don't think you made me paranoid. I think I did it all to myself, really. But now that I started watching for these, what if, I remember, was it last month, Microsoft did a new update that killed a whole bunch of systems, caused millions, billions of dollars, shut down airplanes. But this was just an update, which lead me to ask, well, was that really just an update? Or is that, again, a cover for something? Or could it have been? Because now I start questioning everything I see.
I feel like, especially with Microsoft, I mean, I don't like the route that Windows is going, especially with their new Copilot and the recall that they have that allows you to recall what you were doing on your computer, and it secretly basically records it in the background. They haven't fully implemented it, but if you like that, that option, you can actually activate it. But
and that there's kind of like access to your past history, then so does somebody else.
Yeah. So I mean, it's basically a full-on keylogger and screen capture of everything you're doing on your computer at all times. And the pitch is that they can help you recall what you were doing if you forgot, X, Y, and Z. So it's almost like a solution searching for a problem. And when they start to do that, you should probably start to question motives, because there's no problem that they're aiming to fix there. You're creating problems.
It's almost an excuse for them to store more information of yours.
100%. I'm pretty sure that would all go, to marketing companies that just so happen to have data centers right next to our government data centers.
Obviously, yes, of course.
It'd be one of those things. Somebody can tell me that's not a real thing. That's fine. I'll send them the addresses.
It's bad enough that cars will be spying on us, and other people's cars will be spying on us coming up soon, anytime. We always knew that our computer was doing it. The Germans started researching a very interesting method to combat hacking and having their information stolen and talking and communicating in a clandestine way that couldn't be hacked. In 2016 or 19, they did a study about the feasibility of starting to use typewriters. They actually did. Let's start using typewriters again. And that was brought up because after Hamas's technical failures, where they had their mass self-extinction program of pagers, they started talking about, and the computers and everything else blew up, that maybe they have to go back to typewriters, because it's still harder to capture a piece of paper than electronics these days.
You know what? I mean, They do that with encrypted passwords with people out in the field, operatives, agents out in the field. The one-time password written on a piece of paper. That's the safest way that you can,
It is.
transmit information nowadays. Is going back to all the old technology that we used to have.
Old spycraft. We have the microfilm dot in the letter after the second sentence or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of scary the route that the technology is going, which is why, it's always good to understand what the technology that you have in your hand is doing, your phone.
yeah. So is there any takeaway for people that they should pay extra attention to coming up?
If you're looking online, just look up random cyber attacks. The cyber attacks that happened today, yesterday. It's kind of interesting because your information is probably out there. There are numerous websites you can go to throw an email in. Throw your email in and see if your email has been compromised.
Well, there are sites where you can actually go to and look for you yourself.
Yes, there are. I mean, one of the most popular ones is haveibeenpwned.com, and it's owned spelled with a P. So that's one you can throw your email in, and it'll basically show you, whether it's been owned or not. That's the easiest one. There's a lot of others. There's a lot of other services that are provided by third parties that, they'll check your information for you and see what's.
And remember, none of these sites will ask for your information.
Yeah, no. I mean, other than checking your email, but have I been pwned? You basically just go there, type in your email address, and it'll tell you. And I mean, it comes up. It's got a lot of information on the front page too. It's actually, I'd pull it up on my screen. No, it's fine. Yeah. But
in the meantime, while you're all panicked now, we will try to keep an eye on the cyber war, the underground war, and that happens in the dark, and we'll keep you all posted on what may be going on that you're not seeing in the headlines, or maybe deciphering what the headlines actually mean.
100%. I mean, keep an eye on those random power outages. I don't think there's a lot of those that they happen for a reason. They're not just accident, whether it's obviously there is an innocent aspect to a lot of this. Okay, if there's a power outage in an area and they have to legitimately do some type of maintenance, that makes sense. But there are, I think over here in this area, you had Verizon networks go down throughout the county and somewhat in surrounding counties, and that wasn't for maintenance. So, and they never really fully put out a reason as to why and what happened with that. So things like that, the little oddities, the things that don't make sense.
Yeah. We will keep an eye on that for you all and just let you know what tomorrow's headline brings.